That is my favorite song. Yeah, that is my favorite song. It was the song at my wedding. And I love that song because it's original. There's a lot of intention behind that song, which is that we can do by ourselves, but what we can do together is so powerful. And the Judds, Naomi Judd wrote that song, and it just speaks a lot to what we try and strive for in community, and I think at a deeper level, want for our world. Even though sometimes I see things to the contrary. That's the desire. So I just really appreciated you bringing that song today. Thank you for that. It's wonderful to be with you this morning. I am so grateful to get to serve. And that's because service draws me deeper into my own spiritual journey, selfishly. But at the same time, it draws me out into community and invites me to open up and connect. And I think through the pandemic, that's probably been the biggest challenge. I've mentioned this before, when you speak to a camera for almost 2 years, trying to find inspiration is literally painful. Because inspiration for me comes from being in the space with people. And that was really, the challenging part. So today, I'm grateful for that. Today, my talk is the one and only, and I'd like to tell you a story. So this man falls from this precipice, and he falls into a tree below, and he hangs precariously from a limb. Below him are these jagged rocks, and above him is a tiger pacing on this precipice. And he cries out, "Help, help, is anybody there?" And this booming voice says back, "Yes, I'm here." Or, "Yes, I'm here." Either one works for me, actually. The man says, "Is that God?" And the booming voice says, "Yes, it is." And the man yells, "Can you help me?" And God says, "Yes, you only have to do one thing, let go." And the man says, "Is there anyone else out there?" Now, I can tell you in my own life, I could see the man clenching, hanging from that limb, hanging on for dear life, because when you look below and you see all those jagged rocks, because that's what I see. I have the clinch of death. I mean, I can hold on to something like nobody can. I say that because I know you all share that with me too, right? And what's interesting is we want to control our journey. We want to control the things that happen. We want to control how they happen. We want to control who's in while they happen. We want to control who's in while they happen and how they happen, right? It makes us feel safe because we're really, at least in my case, I'll speak for myself, I am so attached to routine and habit. And I forget that intention is everything. And I saw that little sign on the way to the restroom back there, and I went, "Oh yeah, there's my talk. I could say that and be done." Because to control means that we don't trust that we are part of something bigger than us. We think we're doing it. We think that we, by controlling it, by willing it, W-I-L-L-I-N-G, by willing it, somehow I'm going to prevent the other shoe from dropping. Somehow I'm going to prevent being in discomfort, and somehow I'm going to keep it all just the way I like it, and therefore that makes me happy, yet the entire time I'm controlling it and not necessarily happy in it, because I'm so busy focused on control. Now, I just want you to know I'm looking out at you, and you're either terrified about what I'm going to say next, or you're feeling exactly what I'm feeling when I speak of control. How often do we say this? It better not rain today because I'm working in the garden, I'm going to the beach, I'm walking, I'm playing. How often do I say things like, I better get that raise because I deserve it and I need it? How often do I say things like, she or he or they better not do it that way or I will. Blank, 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 blank. What would happen if we respected the flow of life and used our free will to participate in the unfolding instead of fighting it? Michael Singer, The Surrender Experiment. For those of you, if you haven't read his book, it's been a while since I read it, but when I was thinking about surrender, which I have a friend and congregant over at Namaste who often tells me that surrender is the longest four-letter word in her vocabulary. It's not Des. I believe that because surrender is really the hardest practice. You know, in Science of Mind, it's really a combination, and I say this interesting integration of Buddhism, and I would say kind of a progressive Reformed Christianity meets, you know, Eastern Sufism, right? We're just kind of this interesting mix. And the common, I would say, golden thread that for me in all of these traditions is the fact that I must surrender, that to relinquish control is a spiritual practice. And as often as we think, you know, I would really like to manifest this, and we pray and we do our spiritual practice to manifest that very thing, often when we're manifesting or we think we're manifesting, we're coming from a place of fear, which really isn't a place that I can operate in the flow of the universe. Because when I operate in that way, I'm missing the point that the universe has a grand idea. And you can see it in nature, you can see it as it operates, you can even see it when there is such turmoil and frustration in our world that there's something happening. There's something happening. I don't like it, but there's something happening. What is my part in it? And so when I think about that, again, the man or myself hanging from that limb with my death clench, and I look down below and I see those jagged rocks, it's my perception that creates those jagged rocks. What's really down there? Michael Singer said this in The Surrender Experience. He says, life rarely unfolds exactly as we want it to. And if we stop and think about it, that makes perfect sense. The scope of life is universal, and the fact that we are not actually in control of life's events should be self-evident. Are they? If I'm watching, if I'm paying attention, if I'm present in them, the universe has been around for 13.8 billion years, or give or take a billion years. And the processes that determine the flow of life around us did not begin when we were born, nor will they end when we die. What manifests in front of us at any given moment is actually something truly extraordinary. It is the end result of all the forces that have been interacting together for billions of years. We are not responsible for even the tiniest fraction of what is manifesting around us. That might seem to contradict what we believe in Science of Mind, but it doesn't, because when we do manifest, we're in the flow of life. It's because what we're manifesting is part of that flow. Nevertheless, we walk around constantly trying to control and determine what will happen in our lives. No wonder there's so much tension, anxiety, and fear. And each of us actually believes that things should be the way we want them instead of being the natural result of all the forces of creation. Claims about what we want in life often are based solely on personal preferences that we've made up in our mind. I often think about this from a standpoint of this idea of freedom and what we think about our own personal freedom and the difference between freedom and maybe an inconvenience, which usually the inconvenience is I'm afraid of what I'm going to lose if I think not only about myself but others. It's our personal preferences that hold all of this and our lives together as they are. And if we want our lives to unfold in a way that speaks much bigger and broader than what I'm afraid of, I have to let go. I have to let go and trust that there's something unfolding as life, as the universe, that has a universal pattern. And isn't that the toughest part? And the older I get, the more difficult it is, because I really got down what I like to happen. And it doesn't always happen that way. And it doesn't mean I can't have things the way that I would like them. What it means is, are the things that I want to happen inclusive of everything else that's happening, or is it really just so that I can feel comfortable, so that I can feel content? When we're suffering, we're holding on to something very tightly. It's judgment or fear. We're caught up in a moment. The first thing we do is we blame someone else or we blame ourselves. The things that we do, which is if we call something good or bad or whatever it might be, as soon as we label it, we have shut down the opportunity to allow something to unfold. Reverend John's been talking about the chrysalis and how the chrysalis, which is the caterpillar that completely dissolves into something, it completely becomes almost this nothingness. But within that destruction, because it truly destroys itself, it opens up to the next and greatest creation for itself. And it doesn't have to say, okay, now I'm going to do it. Now I'm going to let go and become this butterfly. It just does. And when we look around and see how the universe unfolds, with the exception, I would say, of humanity, human nature is don't change. Don't be something different. Whatever is happening, and if it looks honestly familiar to any experience I've had in my past where I suffered, I'm going to call it the same. I'm going to characterize it in a way that doesn't allow me to pause in what I call a liminal space, the gap between what has been destroyed and what is about to be created. It doesn't allow me to open up to the potential of what can happen. We're caught up in a moment. The first thing we do is we blame. And when we're controlling, and when we're blaming and we're labeling a situation, we are re-solidifying our belief in a sense of separateness. If I can only trust things to unfold the way I'm uncomfortable, then I'm not opening myself to, as I'm guessing, come into this room to say, I want to be bigger. I want to live this bigger life. I want to live authentically. I want to step away from this old pattern. I want to have more joy and abundance. The only way you can do it is to surrender and to let go. So Tara Brach, who I love, she's just this amazing speaker and writer, and she calls it that resistance, that control, she calls it the clench. That's why I was calling it the death clench earlier. And she says, so let me just ask you, in your body, as you're hearing about surrender and letting go and you think about it, sort of just take a moment, just take a nice deep breath. Where in your body are you clenching right now? I'm hearing giggling over here. So she's clenching somewhere right here. Where are you clenching? Your head? Hip. You're clenching in your hip. Neck. Your teeth. Oh, teeth are good ones, aren't they? Hands. What else did I hear? Stomach's a good one. That's why antacids are just so, these companies are making profit over this. Wherever you're clenching in your body, that clench doesn't allow you to open up. That clench is from fear and control. So am I trying to change someone or a situation in that clench? Am I looking outside as sort of the issue of what that clench is all about? What is the cause of that clench? Now, freedom, which is probably my most, I would say, of God qualities, freedom is the God quality I most resonate with. Because freedom, for me, kind of opens myself up to all the other amazing qualities of peace and abundance and so forth. And or all those qualities support my idea of what freedom is. But freedom only comes when we learn to loosen the grip, when we surrender. Now, let's clarify what surrender is and what it isn't. What it isn't is it doesn't mean giving up and resigning. oh, I give up. What that really means, I'm just tired, right? And that's denial. When I just give up or resign, that's just denial. And that's also not really allowing myself to just pause for just a moment and take a grander view. And letting go doesn't mean just letting go of anger or cutting off someone. Letting go has a bigger and broader idea of letting go of the energy, which takes time to do. It's not like kind of those one and dones. Don't you love one and dones? You know, I've done it over the years where I've had rituals in community. I said, we're going to forgive that person right here and right now. Maybe. Maybe not so much. It's a process to let go, to forgive, to release. It's a process, and it takes focus, it takes intention, and it takes spiritual practice. We speak, and then the other piece about it takes about losing, or I would say, stop practicing the thoughts that I keep practicing that affirm the very thing that I'm struggling with. I don't like that situation. I don't like what's happening. And as long as I continue to say things like that, your brand, your variation of that, then I'm affirming a situation that's right in front of me as bad, as it shouldn't be. And yet it shows up. We speak about losing our minds as if it is a bad thing. I say, lose your mind. Do it purposefully. Find out what you really are beyond your thoughts and beliefs. Lose your mind. Find your soul. Did you feel that? I'm going to say that last line one more time. And close your eyes and feel into that. Lose your mind and find your soul. I think I felt that from the top of my head down to my toes. Lester Levinson was an individual. He created the Sedona process, I think it's called. And he became sick with colon cancer. And he was really struggling with what was this cancer, what was it about, and he really wasn't finding the answers that he wanted. And so he decided, using part of his own method, was to go into that colon and say, what do you want? How can I support your health, our health? And what came back within Lester was that Lester was demanding that the world be different. If the world was different, I'd be okay. If a situation was different, I'd be okay. And he was looking and realized he was looking outside himself as if something outside of himself was causing his pain, when it was his requirement in life that the world must be different, not me. So that experience of letting go, that the outside really affects the inside, is really that my perspective of the outside, the rocks below, are what affect my ability to let go. As long as I see the jagged rocks below, because that's what I've called them, whatever you want to call whatever the situation is, that I refuse to let go, because if I drop into those rocks below, what will die within me, as me? And I imagine just in my own life, as I let go of that limb and I fall, usually what happens is I have a whole host of things below catching me. People, certain situations that show up to support me in my journey, but I'm never alone in it. And to let go means to let go of the idea that I'm hanging on to this limb and this is what's saving me. This is not what's saving me. This is keeping me out on the limb. And that's all it's doing. I've mentioned this before, there was a time that my grandmother lived with me, and she and I shared space for about 12 years. And it was a really precious time. Parts of it were not. I don't know. living together as two strong women isn't exactly how it works well sometimes, at least in our minds. But she was struggling with dementia, and there was a time that I had to move her into a location so that I could continue to work and support both of us financially. And the day I moved her into this location that ended up being this amazing place, and I was really resisting it. And she was resisting it too, because she wanted things to be the same and safe, and I wanted her to be the same and safe. So I remember the day after we moved, my friends and I got together and moved her in. The day after I walked in, I noticed she wasn't out in the space that she'd been in the day before, and I talked to her caregiver, who said that she had had a stroke, either through the night or the next morning. They weren't sure. And the stroke was part of the type of dementia that she had. And so it took her ability to walk. That was the most obvious thing. But as I sat with her that morning, there was this joy in her that I had never seen. And as we were talking, it became clear to me, my grandmother had been a pretty fearful person, and I noticed that on that day, she wasn't afraid. She actually forgot what she was afraid of. She lost that part of her mind that was afraid. And as we sort of came together through those last few months of her life, I realized that what she had forgotten was a lesson to me to forget that a situation doesn't unfold to something bigger and grander. And she taught me those last 6 months of her life about what love was, really. And we came together and supported one another in very different ways. We both let go. We just let go. When we're caught up in a moment, the first thing we do oftentimes when a situation is challenging, we either call the situation deficient or bad, or we call ourselves that. That's the first pause we should take. Stop. The situation is nothing except what I think it is. If we let go a little, we get a little peace. If we let go a lot, we get a lot of peace. If we completely let go, we get absolute peace. The more difficult and challenging the situation, the more potential for growth and light. That's how it is. The places I've been broken are the places that I truly know God, universe, spirit. Rumi said, keep your gaze on the wounded place because that's where the light enters. What if I really believed that? How would I live? So I'd like to leave you with 3 ways of surrender. Letting go of our thoughts, the thoughts that we constantly affirm, that lend itself to the situation to completely be affirmed as what it shouldn't be. To let go of resistance, to allow the things we feel them. Don't you love feelings? About 3 out of 10. Let go to feel. Feel it. There's no other way through it. And let go to a larger idea or a grander experience. Let go. Let us pray. So as I come together in this moment, knowing that God is all there is, Spirit is all there is, the universe is all there is. It is all that I am and all that everything around me is. It is joy and peace, abundance, and it is the freedom, the breath. It is ever creating and ever unfolding. It does not stop. But through myself and others, in that pause that we give it, we can see that grander idea of the universe. And in that, we call it all one. So what I hold in this moment and at this time that we have shared together is that the letting go is the power. In the surrender is the power of the moment. The surrender of what I thought about it, the let go of what I think it should be, and surrender into that grander idea even if all is well in my mind, there's still a grander idea. So I surrender to that. And I know this practice of surrender, and I hold this practice for all in this room. And so I just let go of this prayer and call it good and very good. And so it is. Amen.